US district judge ruling that Google will not have to divest from its Chrome browser. To break down the results of this case and its broader impact, let's welcome in our next guest, Cory Johnson, Chief Market Strategist at Epistrophe Capital Research. Thanks so much for joining us. What do you make of this ruling? I mean, some are saying that it won't change a thing. It's a bit of a nothing burger, but I'm just curious what your view is.
The nothing burger, yes. This was a really weak penalty for a company that has been convicted of running a monopoly. And, you might not think, well, geez, I get the search engine results I want from Google and I see what I can get. But, we are really damaged as a society and as capitalists and as investors from all the opportunities that would be there if Google had not illegally maintained this monopoly in the ways that they did. So the fact that the judge issued some very weak penalties to Google. As you mentioned, they're allowed to keep their Chrome browser, something the government had asked that they should not be able to keep. They're going to share some data from their searches. Think about how Google's business works, right? Think about how they became a monopoly. They gather so much search. They had a really good search engine back when there was competition in the search engine business. They came out with a better mousetrap, but because they garnered so many search queries, they garnered search information, and it became the index for the internet. But then they used that data to build other businesses around it that no one else could compete with, and they kept other people from the market by keeping that data themselves. So the judges said they have to share some of that data going forward. But the fact of the matter is, we don't have competitive businesses in, say, travel, right? Google gets 70% of hotel and flight search traffic sent to their site, and so Google Travel is the primary place where travel happens. One could argue we have higher airfares because Google is capturing all of that revenue from the airlines to get those things out there. We don't have a competitive media, right? 2,500 newspapers have gone away in the U.S. since 2005. There are 200 counties in America that don't have newspapers. We have an uninformed public because the advertising market is in a stranglehold from Google and Facebook. So it really has changed our society, and it's kept us from having all the competitive businesses out there that might offer better mousetraps, to be sure, and give investors like me places to put their money in and other opportunities for capitalism to thrive because of this monopoly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've spent a fair share of my time covering China's regulatory crackdown on its tech sector, namely 2021, and, a very different kind of scenario and outcome there as far as what we're seeing. But, I mean, you do still have a few big names that rule the roost. As you say, Google not completely getting off the hook here with regards to having to share some of that data, but do you still see an opportunity where, there could be alternative search engines and, especially from an investor standpoint, where you could also have, AI assistants that rely on the search data to improve?
I mean, the judge talked about that, how our courts take their time, they weigh the facts, they take some time to think and write and actually come up with sensible judgments. At least that's the goal of our court system. But technology doesn't wait, and technology rushes ahead. And the threat of AI to Google is really interesting, even within Google, right, where they've got their Google Gemini project and product. Google gets paid by generating a list of clicks and having users click and go away from the Google site. They don't get paid for giving you answers. They get paid for giving you links. So that the number of clicks that go into Google, we've seen that people are actually finding the answers that they want through Gemini. That's actually not a great business for Google, because what it really means is they're not generating lots of click income, that people are finding the answers really quickly. It used to be people would go onto Google, do a search, do many searches, and every search result or every 8 searches might result in a click. We understand that now that number is up to 60 search results generate a single click. Now, Google's been able to make up for that by raising the prices on the ads. The scarcity of the linking has actually created higher prices for them. But over the long term, that's really not good news for them, because they're not generating the number of clicks that they used to from every single search, and that's going to hurt revenues.
What does this tell us about the regulators?
I think it's interesting. I mean, they won the case. They got their conviction of a monopoly through their discovery and through their prosecution of the case. They did, in fact, determine that this was a monopoly, and it does bring back memories of what happened, at least for old people like me, of what happened with Microsoft and Netscape and the browser wars. And those penalties also, when Microsoft lost that incredible antitrust case 20 years ago, it wasn't that the penalties were so strong. The penalties were criticized for being weak, just as they are in this Google case. But Microsoft was really curbing its own ambitions and behavior, and ultimately allowed a company like Google to come into the world and dominate technology. And so one wonders whether Google, just trying to watch their flank and making sure they don't make big mistakes, has also lessened their desire to go after other businesses for fear of giving more credence to these monopolistic prosecutions, both in the U.S. and the EU. And I should also point out that, as you experienced in China, and as we see all around the world, technology, and because of networking, tends to pick very few winners. There aren't the competition we saw in businesses of old with the car industry or the department stores or things like that. Because information is generated by information, they tend to congregate. Our social media choices are quite limited. We don't still have Friendster and MySpace. It's all about Facebook and Instagram. And even you see companies like Snapchat and Twitter, or now X, have very, very small markets compared to the giant of social media. The same is true of search. The same is true of networking. The same is true in China with Chinese technology companies, as you pointed out. So the regulators have to work harder and faster to prove these monopolistic cases, to keep us from having so few voices, so few companies in control, and to provide the world with more options.
What role, if any, do you think the Perplexity bid had in all of this, as far as them setting their sights reportedly on Chrome, which gave perhaps a bit more credence to that?
Well, or one wonders if they just entertained it and let the word get out, so it looked like they were considering doing something else. So Perplexity trying to step in and cleverly recognize that this asset might be available to them. It's also interesting to see some of the big cybersecurity vendors offering alternatives to Google Chrome. You've got Palo Alto Networks doing that. You've got Zscaler, which reported results yesterday. Is it yesterday? Time flies. Yes, it was yesterday with Zscaler results also offering their own security-enabled browser. So there is some competition on the margin there. But I do think that the emergence of generative AI tools, which I think a lot of people, when they first start using them, use them more for search than anything else. Of course, they can do so much more and are doing so much more. But those sort of initial experiments with AI, and the big AI players, and I'll put Perplexity in there, I'll put XAI in there, as well as obviously the ChatGPT product from OpenAI and Claude from Anthropic. I don't think we're going to have so many competitors in the future of AI as well, in part because it's so expensive, but also because of those network effects we were just discussing.
Yeah, well, I mean, no doubt the move has earned Google a price target boost from the folks over at RBC Capital. I mean, they've been talking about how this had been a significant overhang, and now that has largely been removed. But, analysts have also been talking about how this has also been a black cloud, and those were Dan Ives's words, a worry over Apple's stock, which is also popping today, as this is likely emerging as a beneficiary of all of this.
Yeah, and I think you might look out for, because of this long-term partnership with Google. I mean, I think we can remember when Eric Schmidt was actually on the board of Apple, and the companies have been so close for so long. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google. And I think that, one wouldn't be surprised, and we've seen some news of the possibility that Apple is looking at engaging with Anthropic or engaging with OpenAI, and maybe now engaging with Gemini to provide the search results. We've also seen a real flight of the top engineers at Apple in the AI departments there, who surely could not have been motivated by finding out that their company is looking at scrapping Apple's AI for an Anthropic partnership, or now maybe, and I think one to keep an eye out for, is a Gemini AI Apple partnership. Probably nothing we'll see in the expected product announcements next week. Apple's not known to jump super fast in these kinds of things, but I think it's something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, it's almost a case of you can't beat them, join them. That's certainly what we're seeing playing out in mega cap tech. It's been a really great conversation, Cory, but we have to leave it there. Cory Johnson, Chief Market Strategist at Epistrophe Capital Research. Appreciate you joining the show.